The first video on this subject was something of an overview of the things that can go wrong. This video addresses something specific that has gone wrong.
All right, this is a follow-up on an SK280 because the function dial was not operating correctly. So we've heard back with some really precise information about what's going on with our friend's machine, and I'm going to see if I can help. Now, at this point, we're in SJ, and I will point to the fact that the bottom set of riders are on a cam, and the top set of riders are on a cam. Now, when I go to 0, I want you to watch those back riders. You can see it here. Oh, there it goes. See that? Here's the arm. It's moving across this base, but you can see this end move quite a bit. There you go. It's coming off of the cam for the bottom riders, but the top rider is still on the cam. Now what our friend is saying is when she goes over to L, notice how these top arms pop in. Hers are not doing that. Now the springs are pretty stout. That's this set of springs here. And you can hear they're musically pretty tight. But now these two arms pivot on these two posts. I myself am not afraid to take a screwdriver, a little flat tip screwdriver, and pop this circlip off, and then I can access that post by removing the machinery washer that's under it.
However, most people don't enjoy dealing with circlips, you must admit.
And if you'll notice, that one flew to parts unknown. That's the problem. You have to keep an eye on the little beggars. But then you lift this machinery washer off, and you sometimes have to walk them off. They're very thin, and they do fit just so. I'll get my hands out of the way in a second. Complicated it by putting my head in the way. I'm going to put this on my finger so you can see the brown, crusty, old lubricant, which was probably a white lithium grease.
Back in the day.
Back in the day when this was made. And this was an estate piece that we inherited, so you can see the dry grease on the underside and a little on the top side. And you can definitely see me moving it around that post. Now in this position, a couple of drops of Croil right there on that post, and then operate it, and you should be able to see the Croil creep down in there and do its work.
It can take some time though. You leave it overnight often.
Right, but see, this is the kind of looseness that you want. You don't have to take it apart. You can slip the springs off and just lift this arm out. Do the same thing on the other side and put some Croil on, because they definitely should pop back into place. She's saying that they're staying about 1/8 of an inch away, which would be about like so, and she can push it in with her hand, which you can't do with the cover on. This is her predicament.
So would I be right in understanding that means it's failing to fully engage the selection mechanism for those stitches?
Right, let me go underneath and hold that on there, and we'll see 0. Okay, there we go. And you can see the flippers here and here that are disengaged in 0, and they're engaged. Here we go. Actually, it's those top two from 0 to L. That's 0, that's L. This flipper and this flipper. So again, make sure that these are popping freely, and you hear the sound. It should be the same on both of them. It's like tuning your guitar. This one should sound just like this one, and it should be about the same rapidity. All right, now she also said she's having a problem when she goes to the F position. And I want you to see that none of these cam riders are affected because they're not on the cam. The F position is this pathway right here, and the rider like this for the stitch size is encapsulated in there. And so what we're doing is the rider is here, and when we go there, the rider's down here. And if you can, I'll hold it up so the camera can see. Look right in here, and you'll see the plate that's moving when we go to the F position. Okay, so you see the plate that's moving in there. That's the plate moving along this cam path with the rider underneath it. This is one of the hard things we talked about in the first video, seating this dial with the cover on. You have to get that rider into that cam path. I'll pull this off before we finish and show you. But going to that position, I'll hold everything together. And you'll see there's L. Now in F, you see this whole plate moving, and it's pulling these two pivots. So again, this is the movable end, and you can see the springs right here. This is the pivot end. So if these are not popping back and forth like they're supposed to, a couple of drops of coil right down in here and right down in there, you can see that one moved. I can flex it just a little, and that's correct. That's L, that's F. So all that is the cam path underneath the dial. But her problem is going from 0 to L, these cam followers up here aren't popping in. I will say that there is an amount of distance that these are away from the cam. They're not actually riding the outside edge of your dial. It's only the cams that they ride. You can see that. But they are supposed to go within the width of this screwdriver tip from the outside of the dial. So I would say this is where the lubrication needs to take place so that they're this loose on both sides. You may be able to spray it with some silicone spray or some LPS1, which is a foaming cleaner, and not pull those off, but it's pretty easy to get these circlips off if you take your time and keep a hand on them. See, that just came right off. You couldn't see what I was doing because you have to keep your fingers around that circlip. But what I do is get between the post and that groove with the tip and pry it out away. It's the same for all of them. I'll put them back on in just a minute, but this one needs a little lubrication, so we'll give it some. But you can see that's how loose it should be, just like that. I'll turn a little for the camera. That's how loose they should be. So right now, if I took the springs off, I could get them out of there. Now let me show you the end of this one is right here. See me moving it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The end of this one, she's right. She said there's a whole lot of stuff in the way. And she's right. The end of this one is underneath there. And what it is these towers contain stops so that the springs can only pull them back so far. There's no limit to the travel away from the spring except the distance that this will move back until it hits something. But there is a stop to how far the spring can pull it in, and that's what the ends are for. The end of this one is under here, but the end of this one is right there, and this wasn't working on this, but when this pops up, you can see that quite clearly. You can see it's making a movement here. That's what it's pulling. It's letting the spring of this flipper move when it moves. See? There's a spring pulling this flipper, and when this moves, it pulls it into the position we need it to be in. So I don't think she's far away from getting this running again. This is my suggestion. I have some Croyle that I got from a gun shop, and so it's got a little plastic tip. You turn it up and you squeeze and put a couple of drops there and a couple of drops there. I would leave it about an hour and then come back and see if these little guys are all loosened up. And then we'll put these back together as soon as I get a pair of needle nose. All right, first let me show you, this was the movement that we were looking at. There's the follower for the cam path here that's underneath this dial. Notice under here there's a lot of the goldish brown residue of old grease. And you can see it quite clearly right here as my screwdriver moves through it and exposes nice bright metal. This kind of thing is the reason back in the day when I actually did work for the public, I started my deep soak in Marvel Mystery Oil. All of the little places like that place, all of the towers and their rotary shafts that they're on, all this kind of stuff soaks out in the mystery oil. I have done it in as little as 24 hours at a seminar. Take it apart in the morning, put it in the mystery oil, come back the next morning and start pulling them out in order and reassembling them.
But there is a step you forgot that sometimes people do forget, and it makes a mess. You always clean the mystery oil out before we knit with them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When this comes up, you can see how much residue there is under there. All that will come out in the mystery oil bath. You can use a small roasting pan for one of these. You want to cover it with enough, probably a gallon in a large roasting pan would do it. I like to leave them about 6 days in the mystery oil, and that way it gets a chance for all of this old grease to be loosened and softened by the quality of the mystery oil.
And we do have whole videos on that.
Oh yeah, we do. But I'm just saying, for our knitting friend, she could put it in Friday, the last time it gets used, pull it out Monday morning or late Sunday evening, put it on a pig mat or something absorbent like newspaper, and just spray with your silicone spray or your LPS1 and wash all the mystery oil off. It'll be red everywhere it's on here.
And it washes out a great deal of unpleasant old icky stuff with it.
It does, but the soak gets into these post areas that we're talking about right now. Now this is Aero Croyle. It's made by Cano Laboratories, and it is the best thing since peanut butter. It's the oil that creeps. It really will go into the threads of a bolt and loosen a nut. I've done it on big trucks. But in this instance, if you don't have the time to do the deep soak, get the machinery washers and the clips off, and that's too much. But we're going to do it anyway.
It doesn't take near
It doesn't. It only takes a couple of drops, and I'm going to by hand move it around, and then you can see that my action is going to get a lot better with a little bit of movement.
But it'll continue to improve for hours and
hours.
Oh
Yeah. And what I'm going to do is encourage it down into those slides for this cam follower.
We've had it happen that a machine, well, like this one, that has literally sat years since the last person successfully used it. Sometimes the deep soak and cleaning thereafter goes great, but something's still stuck, and we've ended up using Croyle on 1 or 2 spots.
Yes, we have many strings to our bow to get these things back into good as new condition. As long as nothing's broken and hardware isn't missing, that can be done. And we have many, many videos showing you the before and after. And we have a lot of satisfied customers that have gotten their machines back and been very, very happy. Right now, let me see if I can show you how to put these circlips back on. It's tough because it takes all 4 hands, and it's hard for you to watch me when I'm doing that. But if you'll notice, I've started the outer 2 lobes into the groove on the shaft. And what your needle nose are going to do is pinch it without the needle nose going below the washer. It won't pinch if it's down to the depth of the washer. So you have to be careful to be behind the post, and you better put your hands on it.
They do fly around.
They do.
There is such a thing as UFOs.
Yeah, no, we know what they are. They're identified. That is a, there you go. That's an OFO.
Right.
Unofficial object. It wasn't allowed to go out and fly around. But you see how it just clips right into place. If you can circle it with the tip of the plier, then you know that it is correctly seated into its groove. I'll do one more facing the other direction. I always try to do them towards the outside from the inside to start with. All right, it started. I'll try to hold it from here and not launch it. So you can, oh, that's what happens. Especially if it gets a little bit of coil on it. So now I'll do it the right way with fingers surrounding it. And you see there it went. And it circles beautifully. Now if we put this back together, we should see the nice spring action of these. And you can see they're already, these are smoother now than they were.
Yeah, they are.
And hopefully that'll solve her problem. Let me put this back together and we'll come back one more time. All right, we are reassembled now with the cover off. We're in the 0 position. There's L. And this is what our friend wants to see. Those two arms pop in. You can hear them now. They're literally popping into position. And then F, and we know that's our slide, and we dropped a little bit of coil into the slide. And I think we're in business. This one's just about ready for you to try it.
Awesome.